Hey guys, we're going to talk about pliers and what it comes to for the homesteader, the survivalist, even just the young suburbanite who wants to start and build a proper tool collection. So we're going to do a video here about pliers, show you the different kinds, the different types, what kind of features they have, and help you out. Now, let's start out. Pliers are just an amazing tool. When it comes down to it, the tool you're going to reach for the most in your house, well, the tools that you're going to reach for the most are going to be, of course, hammer, screwdrivers, and pliers. They are one of the most important tools in your collection because there is so much versatility in what they can do, and there's all different types and kinds for the situation. And when it comes to it, having your home, having a homestead, having some property, these are something that are just an absolute must-have. And when it comes to just taking care of yourself and your family, making repairs and all that, these are completely invaluable. And I know you kind of said, geez, why would a survivalist or anyone like that ever need pliers? Well, we're going to get into that as well because there's some interesting uses for these things aside from just around the homestead. So let's talk. We got some pliers. Now, most people, when they think about pliers, they think about these. They think about needle nose pliers, the little combo pliers with the little wire cutter in there. The cheapos, made in China, with a little rubberized grip. You pinch them too hard, you always pinch your finger in there and you get a blood blister. And this is what most people think of when you think of pliers. And these are probably the most common type of pliers that you're going to use inside your house. You're going to use this for bending wire, maybe clipping a little wire, maybe replacing an outlet or something like that. This is what you're going to probably tend to use. This is what you're going to use when you go fishing. This is what you're going to use for a lot of mundane, routine kind of things. And they come in different shapes, different sizes. This one here is pretty much the same, except it has a better cutter on it, and it's a little bit longer. They come spring-loaded and regular. This one here is a nice fine point. These are very handy. I think this is back when I used to try to tie flies. So you get ones like these that are very special. And that's what most people think of for pliers. Now, the world of pliers, of course, is much bigger. It also includes locking pliers, which are like this right here. This is a cheap China Mart pair. How these work is they actually have a mechanism that locks them. These are really good for holding pieces of material together while you're drilling. It's good for perhaps holding something. Maybe you're putting something over a fire, into heat. You can clamp onto something and hold it. It's adjustable and it lets you open and close. This one here has a flat set of jaws. These come in either flat or kind of rounded. You can see this one has a little bit of a indent here, so if you're clamping onto a nut or something like that, it gives you a little more purchase. Now this is a cheap, China Mart pair, probably, $5. Of course, you can see it's cheap because it keeps popping open at the slightest touch. These go, and these are something I highly recommend. Get a good pair. Don't go with the cheap ones because they do nothing but just rust and fall apart on you after a couple of years. This one's been in, I think, some emergency kits I've had, and fishing kits and stuff like that. They're pretty handy. As you can see, this is a bigger one. This is an Irwin. And I believe Irwins are still made in the USA if I remember correctly. But this is a larger Irwin. You see it has the shorter jaws, kind of looks like a dolphin. Yeah. I'm a dork, guys, I know. Once again, this is something you can clamp something down to your table. You can use this to hold something. These are very heavy, very thick, very good, and very high quality. I know the Irwin stuff's always really good. These are probably 10 years old or more. But you can see these kind of close up, let you grab so if you're grabbing a nut or a bolt, you can lock onto it. Very handy tool. Very good for when you're trying to maybe put in a lag bolt or carriage bolt and you need something to lock it in place while you really ratchet down on it. This here is a channel lock. Similar principle. And kind of mosquito bugging me, guys. Sorry, here I'm swatting a mosquito. Very simple device. Very, very, very handy. How this works, you can see, is they have these little channels cut into the plier, which make it adjustable. So, although it doesn't lock, it's adjustable. You can use this for different sizes. You know, you just got to line up your wrench with the channels, and this will let you, you know, these are very common for using in plumbing or automotive work. Let you get bigger nuts, grab a hold of pipes, things like that. Once again, also these are something you can use if you're heating something up. You can grab a hold of it. They have long handles usually, and these come in all different sizes as well. But they typically have longer handles. It lets you really get a good grip. You know, this is something you can use to hold something together while you're drilling. You can, you know, use it to, you know, there's so many uses for this, guys. And the channel lock here, I believe, are made in the USA. I think I already said. But it's always good. Whenever I get the chance to buy a good USA-made product, I always do it. Now, if I need a tool, guys, I have no problems paying $5 for the China Mart. But if I'm paying $5 for the China Mart, when I have the money, I'm buying the real thing. That's just kind of my philosophy. You know, the cheap stuff will get you through a job, but they're not going to last a lifetime. As you can tell, these ones here are already falling apart and they're only a couple years old. These Irwins, on the other hand, are at least 10 years old, and they are still fantastic. The channel lock also comes in different, this one here is an old Craftsman. I got this when I was probably 20 years old when I got my first car. This is part of my first like car kit. These are the same idea, except they don't have the channels. They just have these little ridge things, so you can, same idea, but this one, as you can see, the jaws on this are rounded as opposed to the channel locks that were flat. Pretty much all Pliers you can pick between a rounded jaw or a flat jaw. Very common with them. This one you can see here has a weird coating on it. But this one here is an old Craftsman I picked up from a Sears. I was like 20 years old or so, so this is easily 15 years old. But it is made in the USA. It's back when Craftsman used to make this stuff in the USA. As you can see, made in the USA. So actually really high quality. Has lasted, you know, 15 years. And the coating gets a little grime on it and it's tough to clean, but these things are going to last, you know, and I'll be able to give these to my son, to be honest. Not really pliers, but I just want to show them because they kind of introduce the next thing. You know, these little wire cutters. These are really handy for cutting things around the house, cutting wire, cutting the heads off of nails, you name it. They're really handy. These are something that people don't really buy so much anymore because there's so many combination pliers out there that have cutters in them. It's kind of made these where they're not as important as they used to be. And you can see, this is an oldie here I picked up, I got for free. Someone actually gave me this along with this. Guess what, guys? Old tools, people will give them to you. People will give you old tools because they want the shiny, nice new ones, but in reality, I can soak this in vinegar, hit it up with a wire brush, oil this thing up real good, it'll be good as new. You know, it will last. You know, this will be something I'll be able to give to my kid. This one here is an old Sears, made in the USA. So that kind of introduces the next, which are things like these combination pliers. This is a Cobalt, which are also made in China, but they're kind of high-end Chinese garbage. Linesman pliers are kind of interesting because they have a little kind of flat jaw there, so you can use them for grabbing and twisting wires. It has a nice cutter on it as well. You can use that for cutting wire, cutting cable, cutting through a chain link fence, you name it. These are also really good for if you strip the head of a nail, you can use these to pull them out. The outside here, you can see these little indentations. These are actually for reaming out conduit. If you cut conduit, you take this in there and you spin it, and it will, it's got these little kind of ridges that will help ream out the conduit so it doesn't have sharp edges. But these are real handy. One of the more important tools you're going to use around the homestead, because you know, anything you're going to cut or bend, you can use those two together with a pair of linesman pliers without sacrificing quality. You know, you can have just as good a pair of pliers and cutters all in one. The linesman pliers are a good two-in-one tool that are very, very handy. Once again, if you can pick up a good channel lock version or one of the other made in the USA, do it. These were just cheap, you know. I wanted a pair, so I grabbed a pair of these cheap Cobalt from Lowe's. They're okay. They're, you know, kind of high-grade Chinese stuff, but The linesman pliers is very handy. If you're going to buy just one set of pliers, get yourself the linesman and next the channel lock. That's where I think the importance is. And then the last, and guys, these are not the only pliers out there. There's actually a lot more than this. This is just what I own. This is another cheap Chinese pair of slip joint pliers. These are very similar to the channel locks, except they only have one adjustment. So, and it's really not that much. So these are for, but the cool thing is they do have a nice kind of rounded jaw to them. It allows you to really grab a hold of nuts and bolts and things like that. I believe that little hole here is for stripping out wire, probably. But yeah, overall, it's a cheap tool, but it, as you can see, it hasn't really seen any use. It's still pretty much brand new. I think I bought it to put in my wife's car kit, but she didn't end up needing it, so it just ended up in the garage somewhere. But these slip joints are, they're pretty handy. They work pretty good, and they're relatively inexpensive as well. So there you go, guys. Pliers. Survival. Why might I need these? Okay, number one, your linesman plier is going to be able to cut through cable, cut through wires, cut through like chain link fences and things like that. You get yourself a good pair. This is really handy. You know, urban kind of survival, getting into things, getting out of things, escape, evasion, getting through a fence. This is a very, very, very handy tool to do that kind of thing. Plus, if you're working in the garden, maybe you're working around the homestead, you're putting up some wires to train some of your fruit trees, or maybe you're putting up some cages around your tomatoes. This is something good to have in your pocket. Clip off those excess pieces of wire, all kinds of good uses. Of course, like your channel lock, very good for automotive. When all those fancy power tools stop working because you don't have power, this is a great thing to have in the automotive world, and especially the plumbing world as well. Lots of do-it-yourself home repairs with these kind of things. And plus, overall, these things do have a slight use in the bush as well. I remember way back in the day, Dave Canterbury was one of his earlier videos back when I first kind of caught him. He, one of his bushcraft kits had a pair of locking pliers. He would carry them into the wilderness because he thought they were very handy. You could do a lot of different things with them when it came to working with materials and all that, and keeping things, clamping things together, making repairs. Say if you're repairing some gear, you can hold it together with this while you sew. These are good for holding your pots and pans in and out of the fire. He used these, you just would buy a cheap, couple dollar pair and throw them in his bushcraft kits. And so they do have a lot of different uses for these guys, and not just something. If you're, a guy who lives in New York City and really don't think you have a need for this, I really think you should reevaluate and consider the fact that these are really good things to have. And no bug out bag would not be complete without a set of linesman pliers. Because I tell you what, if you come up to a roadblock or a barricade, and you got some fence or something that you need to get through, that's something to have. So there you go, guys. Pliers, very, very, very important tool for the homesteader, the survivalist, even your average Joe out in the suburbs.